Hey,
Oh,
John.
sorry, I was on mute. Hey, how's it going?
I am doing very, very well. It's good to have you. It's good to have you.
Yeah,
Welcome.
good to be back.
Yeah, man. I did a preface of the show day before yesterday. It's actually great that you decided to do it today instead of that day because I was able to think about some questions for you and did a quick little excerpt of the show trailer. And I reached out to some people asking them if they have any questions. I got a question just now, so we're gonna ask that later. But how have you been though? You look good. You look
Yeah,
amazing.
let's go. Let's get started.
Yes, yes,
Yeah,
yes.
thanks. Yeah,
Well,
it's
go
been
ahead.
it's been intense. Been going all around the country, taking on Trump, and for the first time, his lawyers are slowly, not slowly. I think they have now fully realized. So we had a hearing in New Hampshire, in Concord, New Hampshire, in person. Trump's
Yeah.
lawyers were there.
Yes, and
I
I
was there.
wanted we start there because I wanted to know what's going on in Hampshire, in New Hampshire. So, and I saw
Yeah.
that you said you schooled some scholars, some people in Hampshire, the New Hampshire, and you said,
Oh yeah. So we had a
yeah,
correct. Yeah. So we had what's called a jurisdictional hearing. So the court wanted to know, does the court even have jurisdiction to hear this argument? And there's three elements of jurisdiction. One is that you have an injury, that it's traceable to the people that you're suing. So you're suing the right people, and that
okay,
you've stated a claim that the court can act upon. And so the
okay,
first part is injury. They try to say that, well, first, they were shocked that I didn't bring an expert witness, and they thought to prove that he has an injury, and they brought in reports, polling data. They brought in an expert for 35 years that had been doing this, worked with the McCain campaign, the Romney campaign, the Trump campaign. And
yes,
what they don't know is that I'm actually an expert litigator, and I know how to hijack an expert witness and use it against them. So
okay,
on cross-examination, I basically got the expert witness to admit that my votes would actually go up. Although politically insignificant, my votes would go up if Trump was disqualified and off the ballot. And
okay,
so I got him to admit on the stand that I in fact had an injury. And the Trump side was absolutely furious that I didn't have to spend any money, do anything, no reports. I just took over their own expert, used it against them. And then the second part was the state was trying to argue, well, we're not the one causing the injury. And I had to explain that that every act in furtherance of a constitutional violation is an injury. So the mere fact that he's campaigning is an injury. If if they accept his paperwork, that's an injury. When they process the fee, that's an injury. When they print the ballot with his name on it, that's an injury, right? Like, we don't have to wait until election day for there to say, like, okay, now the harm has been fully materialized. Like, we're not idiots, right? Like, the train is coming right at us on a clear set tracks. Like, we can deduce that a harm is coming.
And when you talk about injury, what
And so I was able to easily dispel that.
And for viewers who don't
I'm
know
sorry?
what an injury is, tell us what an injury is. Your argument is that an injury has been caused. For viewers who don't know,
Correct.
explain that.
Yeah.
Yes.
So this is what all the the idiots that tried to sue Barack Obama and trying to say that he wasn't born in the U.S. and they were just voters. This is what they learned the hard way. So you have to have what's called a concrete, particularized injury in fact in order to get into federal court. So you can't go. Let's say your city council passes a law, and it says something that's unconstitutional, right? Like, you can't hold religious services on a Saturday. So a person of Jewish faith would feel like, hey, that's when we hold our. Or let's say, like, they pass a noise ordinance, like you can't have a outdoor event with noise before 10 a.m. on a Sunday, right? That's meant to target Christians or something like that. And those kind of like tent revivals. Well, you have to be one of the people affected by it, right? Like, let's say I'm an atheist at home, but I believe very firmly in the First Amendment. I can't be like, hey, that's not right. That interferes with Christians' right to worship. And I decide to bring a lawsuit against the city for that. The city's going to say, well, what the hell do you care? You're an atheist. Like, you don't even worship on Sunday. Well, and then I argue, but I could decide to worship on Sunday, right? I could convert tomorrow. The courts are like, nah. Like, the courts want somebody that has skin in the game, right? Like you have direct skin in the game. You are going to be directly injured by this. So even though we obviously know some of the people that brought the birther claims were just, racist as hell, right? Like, no matter how much they are harmed by seeing a black man president of the United States. That's an injury shared by 80 million other Americans that didn't like him, and maybe a million others, that are, have racial, animosity towards that.
Yes.
That's not what they call particularized enough. Particularized, it can't really be quantified. And I guess the largest group of people would theoretically be like in a class action lawsuit. If you're talking about all Facebook users in the United States or something like that, that's theoretically how large the group could get. But usually they're looking for a small number, no more than 4 digits, right? So preferably less than 10,000, unless it's a clearly identifiable class. And it can't be voters, right? Because voters is just freaking everybody. So that's the reason why those birther cases against Obama were all dismissed. And it's funny because I can tell you 98% of lawyers that even graduate from Georgetown can't tell you what standing is if they haven't actually ever litigated constitutional matters. So this is a concept that is very elementary in constitutional law, but very not understood by a lot of even licensed lawyers. And so
this is quite interesting that you would raise the birthers, because to the birther issue, they were appealing to the issue of injury, but you're saying that there's no injury there because it wasn't particularized.
Exactly, right. They have a grievance that's shared by 80 million other Americans that didn't want Obama to be president, but still, they were in the minority, right? So it's just like, tough shit, you lost. So what I learned from that in reading all these cases is I stood back and I thought to myself, I was like, well, then who has standing to sue a candidate to challenge their eligibility? And funny enough, that question was answered by Donald Trump. Donald Trump, during one of the debates in 2016, told Ted Cruz during a live debate, and it's on YouTube, he told Ted Cruz, you better be careful because my lawyers already told me I have standing to sue you to challenge your eligibility to be on the ballot because you were born in Canada. So even Trump, by his own admission, said his lawyers said, hey, as a fellow primary Republican candidate, I can sue you to challenge your constitutional eligibility. And that was, it wasn't like Trump gave that to me. I found that afterwards. But when I was reading all these cases, which largely developed because of this woman by the name of Falani. She was a third-party libertarian, Green Party or libertarian. She was a third-party candidate in the 80s and 90s. She brought a lot of litigation, and she helped bring clarity to this issue. And her cases, coupled with the birther cases, coupled with Trump's statement, came to the conclusion. That's when I was like, oh, okay. So if I am a fellow Republican primary candidate, I would have standing then to sue Trump and enforce Section 3 of the 14th Amendment. And that's what his lawyers are learning the hard way, because I'm kicking their ass in court. And then also the judge is also realizing that as well. So his name is Joseph LaPlante. He was recommended by 2 Democratic senators from the state of New Hampshire and then nominated by President George W. Bush. So he's a very middle of the road guy, very fair-minded. Whether he rules, and I'll tell you the pros and cons of whether he rules for me or against me on the jurisdictional issue. But then Trump's lawyers brought up this thing called the political question doctrine. It's not what it sounds like. It doesn't mean that the court can't answer political questions, right? They take political cases all the time, even gerrymandering and all that stuff. What the political question doctrine means is if an issue has been reserved exclusively to one of the political branches of the government, which is the legislative and executive branch, then the judicial branch, under the separation of powers doctrine, can't second guess that decision. And so that would be like the people speaking and deciding to nominate a candidate, right? So they nominated McCain, even though he was technically born overseas, and there was a question about whether he was automatically a U.S. citizen at the time of his birth or not. They did the same with Obama. But the thing is that when they brought these lawsuits against McCain and Obama, it was after the Republican National Convention and after the Democratic National Convention. And so what the courts effectively said is, look, there's a hidden fourth branch of government here, and that is the people. The people are the ultimate fourth branch of government, and that's another political branch. And when they have decided that they're going to nominate a person, then it is no longer a question for the courts. It's a major political party, and the 2 parties speak for 95% of the American electorate, or let's at least agree to 80% of the American electorate. And that is significant enough that we should defer judgment. And under the Electoral College Act, you could object to the certification of electoral votes based on constitutional eligibility. Now, that was pre-2022. In 2022, Congress, because of Trump's failed coup attempt, changed the Electoral College Act and said, no, you can only object to the certification of votes if there was any actual voting irregularities, but not based on constitutional qualifications or eligibility. So that doctrine arguably doesn't even apply anymore. But for the sake of being conservative, I told the court, let's still operate on the presumption that it would. Even if it does, the Republican National Convention is not till July 14th of 2024. So we got plenty of goddamn time. And there's been no political decision, right? Because even the Secretary of State said, oh, it's not my decision whether to accept or reject his application. I'm merely ministerial. If he submits it, I have to process it. And then I asked the Secretary of State, if Vladimir Putin showed up with a declaration of candidacy, with a $1,000 check, would you accept it? And his answer was, yes, I have no discretion to reject it. Which is obviously the ludicrous interpretation of the law. But what there is, he admitted it's not a political decision, which negates the application of the political question doctrine. So long story short is there's absolutely no basis for the judge to say the court doesn't have jurisdiction. The next question, and this is where Trump has a little bit of a better argument, not a strong one, but a better, is that Section 3 of the 14th Amendment is not self-executing. So what that means is generally, and I disagree with this interpretation of the law, but it's over 100 years old and nobody's really challenged it ever since. The Constitution says that the Supreme Court and the inferior courts underneath it have jurisdiction over all cases and controversies arising under the Constitution. Period. It's that simple. But the way that they have denied our right to access the judiciary is the Supreme Court created this rule about 100 years ago that said, well, it arises under the Constitution, which gives us jurisdiction, but you still need to cite a cause of action. And a cause of action can only... Think of how ludicrous that sounds. I have to be given permission to sue for a constitutional violation by Congress. And the way they've said it is, oh, well, they're representative of the people, right? The fourth branch of government. So they have to give you the right to sue the government because the government has sovereign immunity. Again, that's not what the Constitution says, but that's how the courts have limited the ability of people to enforce their rights. Now, this was circumvented in 1976 in a very famous case called Bivens versus 4 unnamed officers of the Bureau of Narcotics. So Mr. Bivens, 1976, he had a shop. He was accused of running a bodega, right? A bodega is pretty much, it's a shop where nobody is really in there to buy anything. Like they have like a bottle of Gatorade that's 10 years old sitting on the shelf. It's a front, right, for drug dealing. You come in, you tell the clerk a certain code, and then they sell you some marijuana or cocaine, whatever you want to buy, right? So he was accused of running a bodega. The modern equivalent of the DEA, kick in his door and ranting, busting up all the merchandise. In modern day dollars, it was about $75,000 to $100,000 worth of property damage. And then they didn't even find a single freaking drug. It turns out he was just running a really crappy store that looked like a bodega, but it was just a really crappy store. And so he got really pissed off about that, right? And then he said, hey, can I see your name and credentials? And they're like, nah, take a hike, see you later. And they literally just got in their cars and left. So he was sitting there like, what the hell just happened? Like, DEA just kicked in my door, caused $75,000 worth of damage, didn't find a freaking thing, then just said, sorry, peace out, we're leaving. And then he said, can I have your badge number and name? And they're like, nope, and they drove off. So he went to federal court and he sued directly under the Fourth Amendment. He said, unreasonable search and seizure, I don't know who they are. I just know that they identified themselves as DEA, so it's 4 unnamed officers with the DEA. The lower court dismissed his case, and they said, sorry, dude, like the Fourth Amendment gives us jurisdiction, but Congress never allowed you to sue the DEA to collect damages. And he's just like, are you freaking crazy? Like I don't need Congress to give me that. Our founding fathers and all the revolutionaries that fought in 1776 and died on the field, they're the ones that gave that to me. So he appealed it to the U.S. Court of Appeal for the Second Circuit. The Second Circuit said the same thing too. They were like, sorry, man, that's not the way the judicial system works. You have to cite a statutory cause of action created by Congress. Congress never gave you that. So too bad. It went to the Supreme Court, and thank God for brain that year. And they took a look at the case, and they said, look, this is pretty messed up. The DEA kicked down Mr. Bivens' door, broke all the crap in the store, $75,000 worth of damage, right? That is the Founding Fathers' definition of unreasonable search and seizure. It wasn't even a proper search. It was literally just busting up everything and then leaving. Yeah. If we don't recognize an implied cause of action arising directly under the Fourth Amendment, it renders the Fourth Amendment meaningless. Then what the hell was the point of the Revolutionary War and all those soldiers giving up their lives and dying and bleeding to death on the battlefield? Yeah. And they said, we are not prepared today to render the Fourth Amendment to meaningless words on 200-year-old paper. We are going to recognize that there is a direct cause of action arising directly under the Fourth Amendment. And that's what we do here today. And it became known as a Bivens cause of action. You could sue directly under the Fourth Amendment. Then other lawyers got creative, and they were like, well, wait a minute. What about the First Amendment, right? Violations of religion or speech. What about, I forgot the amendment. I think it's the Eighth Amendment for the bail, excessive bail and fines and things like that. So people started getting very creative. And just recently, the Supreme Court started scaling back on that. And they're like, okay, you guys are kind of going hog wild with the Bivens stuff. But it's just like, dude, it's not hog wild. It's our goddamn constitutional rights. And you guys just brushing this off as just like sorry. Like, you can only sue the government if you have permission. A legal concept that would make our founding fathers roll in their grave. But I digress on that issue. So that's what my case is about, is can I sue directly under Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, or did the enabling clause in Section 5 of the 14th Amendment, did it apply to Section 3? Now, Chief Justice Salmon P. Chase in 1863, when it was a white man, Jefferson Davis, standing criminal trial, certainly agreed that it was self-executing. At that time, it was Jefferson Davis. He was the main traitor, right? He was the president of the Confederacy. He was standing trial for treason, because he was, and he should have been hung. But he was standing trial for treason, and he came up with a very unique argument. Him and his lawyers said, well, Section 3 of the 14th Amendment is self-executing, which means that it already provides a political punishment for Mr. Davis. He can't hold public office for the rest of his life, right? He's like a second-class citizen. And so to try him criminally for treason, when he's already guilty of injury. And Chief Justice of the United States Supreme Court, Salmon P. Chase, said, you know what? I like that argument. That's a good argument. And on that basis, plus a couple of other things that happened, we're going to go ahead and dismiss the criminal charges against Jefferson Davis. Then a couple of years later, there was a black man, and he had been convicted wrongfully, of course, just like almost all black men in the late 1800s. He was wrongfully convicted, and he came up with a very novel argument, the same argument made by the white man, Jefferson Davis, and his white lawyers, and said, hey, the judge in my case, he was a Confederate. He actually fought for the Confederacy, killed Union soldiers on the battlefield. Nobody is more disqualified from holding office. So anything he did, including presiding over my case and my criminal conviction, should be null and void as a matter of law, based on what Salmon P. Chase said in Jefferson Davis's case. And of course, they were just like,
and this was that was recently in New Hampshire. You were making that case, and that's also the case you're making.
That's not what we said, right? Now trying to use the white man's argument.
Sorry, I mean, I think there is some.
So in 1868,
we're having some glitches. I'm not sure where that's coming from. I apologize about that, and for the viewers, I apologize.
Oh, that's okay.
Glitches, but so the argument. So because I know this argument is part of the argument as well as it relates to what's going on in South Florida with you suing Mr. Trump.
Exactly. Yeah.
We're going to ask you about that, but we know that there's another jurisdictional issue going on in New Hampshire, but you're also using the same argument, and whether or not the court.
This all ties in.
Okay, definitely. So
exactly.
And for those of us who don't know, Section 3 of the 14th Amendment: no person shall be a senator or representative in Congress, or elector or president and vice president, or hold any office, civil or military, under the United States or under any state, who having previously taken an oath as a member of Congress. No, I think I'm reading the blah, so on and so forth. It goes on to say, um, or as a member of any state legislature or as an executive or judicial officer or any state to support the Constitution of the United States shall have engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the same or given aid or comfort. And then you reference Section 5 of that same amendment of Section 14 saying the Congress shall have power to enforce by appropriate legislation the provision of this article. So I know you referenced Section 3 and Section 5. Sorry to cutting you. Yes, so just to get some content and background for people following, but continue. So you're talking about how all of these stories give you base now within which making. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, that's the next question for the court is, and that goes to whether I've stated a claim upon which relief can be granted. And so that's going to be the next thing. But this first part, the jurisdictional part, is major because if the court clears it and says the federal judiciary has jurisdiction, this is going to have nationwide implications. This has never happened before.
Yeah.
And so it's going to be pretty wild. The case is going to move forward to trial. And so the judge is going to rule on or before Friday, November 4th. So mark your calendars. The judge is going to rule on or before Friday, November 4th. That's pretty much next Friday. Not only that, but U.S. District Judge Douglas Reyes in Phoenix, in Arizona, covered by the Ninth Circuit, has now scheduled an expedited trial on the merits for November 14th. This is a big deal.
Oh, wow. So you are in New Hampshire.
And I'll get into the Cruz lawsuit right now. Why?
But so you're in New Hampshire, so that, you're also in Arizona. That's
correct.
Why I saw text. So, I sent a text. Okay, great. Go ahead. Sorry for cutting you.
Yeah, I have 27 cases all over the place, but there's about 12 that we're honing in on.
Yes.
The New Hampshire case is covering the First Circuit. That's moving very positively in the right direction. So I don't think I need to, but I have a backup case in the First Circuit as well, just in case. I always have backups. That's what people don't realize about me.
Yes.
I always have a plan B and C and D and E. I'm never caught off guard. And that's just the chess player in me. A lot of people don't know this. I don't know if I mentioned it last time. I used to be a chess master. But yeah, so then, in Arizona, that's covering the Ninth Circuit. And the thing is that what's monumental about that case is the Ninth Circuit includes Montana, Idaho, and Alaska. 3 states that have been historically, reliably a red state in the general election, like for the last. If I won in the Ninth Circuit, Trump would lose those states. That would automatically put Joe Biden at 269, which he only needs 270 to win. So at that point, Joe Biden would only need 1 more electoral vote. And guess what? In the First Circuit, there's 1 electoral vote that Trump would get in Maine that he would lose. So if I win in the First and Ninth Circuit, Biden already wins the general election. Also, I have a case moving forward very quickly in the Fourth Circuit. And again, if I win the Fourth Circuit, Trump loses North Carolina, South Carolina, and West Virginia. If he loses the Fourth Circuit, just that circuit alone, even let's say I lost in New Hampshire and I lost in Arizona, but I won in Maryland, Biden automatically wins the general election because Trump can't get to 270 without the Fourth Circuit. And then likewise.
And when we talk about if you win, you're not here talking about the presidential campaign. You're here talking about if you
I'm talking about the court case.
The court cases. So the court cases can affect his ability to, because he won't be able to run in those ballots and in those states, correct? Sorry. Okay. Interesting.
Correct. Yes. Yeah. So that's the significance of these cases.
Yes.
Trump has to, in order for Trump to defeat me, Trump has to win in every single court jurisdiction. In order for me to win, I only need to win in 1 jurisdiction. So the odds are stacked against him big time. And this is what I like to call, and you can Google the guerrilla warfare. Guerrilla warfare was a concept of warfare where it's a Spanish word. Guerrilla means small. So guerrilla warfare is small warfare, right? It's defeating your enemy through 1,000,000 paper cuts. 1 paper cut does nothing to a giant, but you do 1,000,000 all over the body, and all of a sudden now he's feeling it, right? And that's what happened with Trump. Trump didn't take this serious early on when I started executing the strategy.
Yes.
In late August, early September. Now it's coming to bite him in the ass because now all these cases are moving forward. All the hearings are being set simultaneously. His lawyers are missing deadlines, filing documents in the wrong court. I mean, it's laughable, right? Like I'm looking at what these licensed attorneys that have been practicing for 20 plus years have been doing, and it looks like something I would see from a first-year law student. So I have them on the ropes big time right now, and they're feeling it. Their only saving grace is that in some of these jurisdictions, they're getting clerks and magistrate judges that are sympathetic to them. And they're bending some of the rules. And in some cases, like in West Virginia, the magistrate judge is directly breaking every rule possible. And I already have that. The judge thinks that he's untouchable, but under 28 USC 351A, I can file a complaint. But yeah, we got him on the ropes.
And by the way, who is Magistrate Judge Alison Clare? You said that she's abusing her position and protecting Donald Trump from accountability for January 6th. And so that one judge you also mentioned, who is that?
Yeah. So Judge Alison Clare. Oh, good. Sorry, there was a glitch there. But yeah, I'll go into Judge Alison Clare. So Judge Alison Clare, let me explain how the federal judicial system works, because if not, the audience won't understand this. So you have your Article III judge that was recommended by the senators, nominated by the president, confirmed by the entire U.S. Senate. And then they become an Article III judge appointed for life. Now, when you're a judge in a heavy jurisdiction like the Northern District of California, or for that matter, your workload gets really intense. And sometimes there are the early stages of a case that, although are substantive, they're technically procedural. And so what you do is you can hire as an article. Let's say I got appointed an Article III judge. I could hire somebody to be my magistrate judge. And that's literally a job posting, and then I hire them. And now that person, who would normally probably be a law clerk, now they get to wear a robe, and they get to hide that I don't have time to handle, right? So all these pretrial motions and all that stuff, they handle that. And even if it's like a substantive motion to dismiss, I'm usually going to tell my magistrate judge, like, dude, I have a lot on my plate. I'm handling these other bigger cases. You do the legal research and then give me a recommendation. Like, you can't rule on that, but you do the research, do all the legwork, give me a recommendation, and then I'll review everything, what they said, what you said, and then I'll make a final ruling. But that's obviously going to save me hours. Legal research in a case, it saves me about 3 to 4 hours per case. And if I have like 40 cases on my docket, you know what I mean? That's 160 hours saved. And I get to push all that crap on the magistrate judge. So that's the job of a magistrate judge. Basically a glorified law clerk. So that is what's supposed to be done. In every case I've ever had in the federal judiciary, the magistrate judge's recommendation is always well thought out, right? Because also you have to remember, as a magistrate judge, now let's reverse roles. Let's say I get hired as a magistrate judge by a judge. I want to showcase my expertise, right? So anytime I make a recommendation to the judge, I want it to be well-researched, case citations. I want it to be beautiful and perfect. That way, later on, if there's a vacant spot, I can tell the judge, hey, can you put in a good word to Biden? And maybe I can get nominated. And in fact, a lot of the judges that are nominated are current magistrate judges. So it's your time to shine, right? It's your time to really show, hey, I'm intelligent. I know how to do legal research. I can be an article. So every time I've seen a magistrate judge, even when I disagree, it's at least well-reasoned, well-researched. I disagree with some of it, and I've objected to magistrate findings, plenty of times. And in 2 cases, the judge didn't go with the recommendation. And in 1 case, the magistrate judge was so embarrassed, he withdrew his recommendation and then reversed and recommended that my relief be granted. But in this case, Judge Alison Clare cited 2 cases that had absolutely nothing to do with me, like a birther case. It was a citizen voter challenging the eligibility or the constitutional qualification of another person. So they didn't have standing. And she quoted the court as saying Section 3 of the 14th Amendment doesn't provide an independent cause of action. But that is what we call, in the legal world, we call it dicta, D-I-C-T-A. Dicta basically means that was just an offhand comment by the court. It wasn't backed up by legal research, historical analysis, legal analysis. Absolutely not. If I said, I think that if you did this, it would be a civil rights violation. Like, unless I have citations, that's called dicta. I'm just expressing my opinion. And there have been times where even me as a tax professional, I've told a client, I think it might be this, but let me research it. And then I research it, and then I call them back. I'm like, oh crap, never mind, I was wrong. Like, I actually found a case that specifically said you can't do that. So in other words, that's why you can't rely on dicta, because dicta is just an offhand comment that's not backed up by substantive legal research. And that's exactly what Alice 2 cases that merely made this offhand comment. And what's absolutely worse, is that she admitted to it. She said, I agree with these statements by the court, not with I agree with the legal analytical research of the court, or I agree with the historical research of the court. She just said, I agree with that offhand statement of the court. And then she dismissed all of my research, which is like a 42-page verified complaint that, again, is like based on scholarly legal research, thoroughly Jefferson Davis, a lot of different cases analyzing the self-executing nature of Section 3 of the 14th Amendment. And she dismissed that as like, oh, he gave us like a history lesson on Section 3. And I'm like, what? Like, I was like, what do you think legal research is?
I was just about to say that law is a lot of precedent. Yes.
Yeah, like legal research literally is the study of legal history, case law. I'm not just telling you stuff. And even if I was talking about, the way the senators and congressmen deliberated the enactment of Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, that's relevant because that goes to the legislative history and the intent of the framers. So again, I can tell when somebody is against me, but intellectually against me, right? And I like that. I have respect for that. If you like Trump's best legal argument, I'll give it to him here because I'll still, wipe the floor with his face or wipe the whatever. Trump's best argument, January 6th, was not an insurrection. It was a conspiracy to commit an insurrection, but it didn't quite get to an insurrection. That would be his best legal argument. Now, if the judge came back and argued that, and then also just simply said Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, there's no binding case law that says that it's self-executing. And even Chief Justice Salmon P. Chase, although he presided over the criminal trial of Jefferson Davis, it was still considered a lower court case. It's not binding upon this court. If she wanted to rule that way, I would have said, okay, there's no bias there. Well, obviously there's bias, but at least it's intellectual, right? She stated her legal reasoning, and she has countered on an intellectual level. She's countered my position. But for her to rely on dicta and then dismiss all of my legal research as just like a history lesson, that in the poker world, by the way, I also used to be a professional poker player.
Okay. I'll get you on one of my teams.
In the poker world, that's called a tell. It lets you see their true self, right? And it revealed a hidden bias that she has. And that's where I was just like, no, this was not an intellectual disagreement with my legal position. And by the way, Trump hadn't even filed a response yet. So I don't know on what basis she's already basically recommending that the court dismiss the case when Trump hasn't even requested that relief yet. So it's absolutely bizarre. And it's not bizarre. It reveals that she's a Trump supporter. That's what it is. That's why I made it clear to Senator Alex Padilla and the new senator. Oh, that's in California.
California. Okay.
Yeah. So this case was filed in the Eastern District of California, which covers Sacramento, which is the capital of California. And so yeah, I had to do that, and I had to out her because I'm sick and tired of the judges flying under the radar, right? We never hear of the nation, and when somebody does catch on to it, they don't out them. And I'm done with that. If I sense that they are a Trump sycophant, I'm going to out them and I'm going to make sure I end their freaking career. And now Judge Alison Clare, I guarantee you her career is over. If her name ever gets to the Senate Judiciary Committee, I will personally invest $1 million of my own money to sink her nomination. So I can say definitively right now, her career is over.
And let me ask you a question as it relates to, I know you talked about Judge
She did not challenge me on an intellectual level. Again, she was relying on dicta and she was doing Trump's job. So she's not being a neutral arbiter. She's being Trump's lawyer right now. And that's where I draw the line. Again, even if Judge Joseph LaPlante in New Hampshire rules against me in jurisdiction, I trust that he's going to have probably a 40-page legal opinion clearly outlining why. And I will respect that. But there's a difference between that and what happened in California. And I want to make that distinguishment because, again, it has to do with the good faith nature that I'm approaching this. They are, gods in black robes that can't be politically attacked and challenged. And they're absolutely wrong, which is Judge Alison Clare is going to learn that the hard way. But yeah, I decided that the gloves are coming off for this.
And one question, let's do a follow-up. The last time I know you were waiting on you had appealed the decision by Judge Eileen Cannon as it relates to the Florida lawsuit. And but she had dismissed your case on a one-liner saying you lack standing, and you took the course and you took to the 11th Circuit District Court asking for them to make a ruling on the claim and to overrule Judge Cannon's ruling as it relates to the issue of standing. And one of the things you also said one of the arguments that that Trump team will have is that if you take it to the Supreme Court or file an appeal, you said that they would argue that you don't appear on any state ballot, but you while you are filed with the FEC, you do not appear on any state ballot. But so I want to know what's the update as it relates to the 11th Circuit District Court, and whether or not you are on any state ballot. I believe you may be on some, but what's the update on that?
Yeah, so that I believe yesterday was the 31st day that the case has been officially fully briefed and pending before the 11th Circuit, and they still haven't ruled. So what happened is Judge Cannon dismissed it.
Wow. Sorry.
Yeah, they haven't ruled.
Yes.
Yeah. So I mean, unfortunately, but yeah. So Judge Cannon dismissed the case. I did a dual appeal. I appealed to the 11th Circuit, but then I did a Rule 11 emergency appeal to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court denied the petition on Monday, October 2nd, because that was the same day I was in Nevada filing the documentation to be on the ballot. So this is what everybody got wrong, right? And Trump started doing victory laps, basically being like, "Oh, the Supreme Court said that I could be on the ballot." Dude, that's not what they said. All they said was that they didn't need to voice an opinion on standing because I was already on the ballot. So it's not an issue anymore. There's no question about whether I'm a bona fide candidate if I'm actually on the ballot. I'm in the ballot in Nevada. I'm in the ballot in New Hampshire. Today, I just filed the documentation for South Carolina. Next week, I'm filing in Arizona. And a lot of these things I could file right now, but the states have these arbitrary filing periods. Like West Virginia, it's January 9th to the 26th. It's like the first Wednesday, but not later than the last Saturday of January. It's rules, which, by the way, I'm challenging that under the Equal Protection Clause in South Carolina, but I don't want to get distracted. But the point is that they have all these weird arbitrary filing periods, and I would already be on the ballot of every damn state in the country if it wasn't for all these weird, and inconsistent rules across all 50 states. But I'm going to change that because I am bringing a equal protection case in South Carolina to specifically challenge that. And hopefully we can get national uniformity going forward. And that's going to make it easier for third-party candidates like me, or even like third parties, to emerge. And that's what they don't want. And that's how they rig the two-party system. But I'm gonna completely unravel that and append the two-party system. But that being said, wait, where were we? I lost my train of thought for a second.
You were talking about what the reason why they're taking so long to provide a decision.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Yeah. So yeah, on October 2nd, the Supreme Court basically said, you have standing, right? Like you're a candidate now. There's no question about it. So we don't need to get into this. So now it's on the 11th Circuit. The 11th Circuit has to issue out a ruling, but they're obviously dragging ass. And why? Because it's an extremely conservative circuit. And they're probably seeing that there's an opportunity right now. They know that I am going for the 1st, 9th, 10th, and 4th circuits that are very liberal. So they're most likely trying to craft an opinion right now to try to get to the merits. But they can't, because the case was solely based on Eileen Cannon should be disqualified from any and all Trump-related cases. And that's the part where they know that they are checkmated, but they're trying to figure out a way out of it, because their own case law said if there is any doubt whatsoever about a judge's impartiality, that judge should mandatorily recuse. Now, that's what they said when they were being honest back in the mid-90s. So now we're coming to the Cannon case, and now they're trying to be the whole, oh, hold on.
Right.
That's not what we actually said. And they're going to try to backpedal. And I can guarantee you they're going to try to backpedal because it's, again, what I've slowly realized is this country is really, really corrupt. Our judicial system is corrupt. Our elections are rigged. It's a two-party system. The districts are gerrymandered to where the politicians are picking the voters rather than voters picking the politicians. They don't have any term limits, so they can just sit in Congress for the rest of their life, using their power and influence to raise more money. And that's the reason why incumbents have a 98. It's gotten to the point where this is basically not a republic anymore. The politicians get to basically stay there for life. They get to pick their voters. The courts say, oh, we can't touch that topic because we don't get into political gerrymandering. The federal judicial system itself is rigged. And I can tell you that if any litigator out there doesn't have his appellate practice down, you're going to get railroaded, because it's all about how well you know the judge and your connections.
I have a question for you. Since you mentioned that, since you're on that topic, I have a question, because
it's unfortunately I'm working very methodically on how to upend the system.
Sorry, the glitch is so sometimes after I speak it takes
no worries.
5 seconds. So sorry, but there are two questions I have. One from someone who had tweeted you on the issue of lifetime appointments, and since you just mentioned it, so you said that the Democratic senators are introducing a bill to establish Supreme Court term limits. And you said that you like that, but it is unconstitutional because the Constitution provides for lifetime appointment. But what was the caveat? Good behavior. And you're talking about and I said yesterday, it's easy to get around good behavior. I mean, you talk about the issue of corruption, but Vince Gattaro replied to you saying, we should add an amendment to include term limits. And then you responded by saying, it is insanely difficult to do so. So my question is, why are they so insanely difficult to do so? And what recommendation you have for the Democrats who are introducing this bill? Should it not be from the constitutional level or instead of the legislature?
Yeah, so constitutional amendments are incredibly difficult, right? There was the Equal Rights Amendment, which simply wanted to grant equal rights to women, and that couldn't even get ratified. You have to have 2/3 of all the state legislatures ratify it, and then you have to have Congress involved as well. And nowadays, you can't get anybody to agree to anything, pretty much. So it's constitutional amendments, they're pipe dreams, right? They always say that, oh, just amend the Constitution. Like that, trust me, that's phenomenally easier said than actually done. Because they've been working on a constitutional amendment to impose congressional term limits for over 30 years, and it hasn't happened. So again, it lets you know that this is not and that's something that public polling shows 80% of people support, and that can't even get ratified. So don't waste time with constitution. This is something that both Republicans and Democrats universally agree on. That is the only time you're going to see a constitutional amendment, I guarantee you. And so what you want to do here, and right now conservatives have the Supreme Court, right? So why would they want to add anything that tries to regulate them? They're going to be like, hell no, guys. Like, we dealt with a liberal Supreme Court for like 3 decades. Now it's time you guys feel the pain, right? So forget it, right? Republican-controlled state legislatures, never. It's never going to happen. It's a pipe dream. Let it go. So That being said, it's better to hang our hat on the term good behavior. So in the Constitution, they have different standards for impeachment. When they talk about impeaching the president or congressmen or senators or judges, it says, no, I'm sorry, not judges, just members of the executive and legislative. If you're going to impeach them, it says it has to be for high crimes and misdemeanors. Now, some people have, and this is actually in terms of 1776, it just meant like your demeanor, your behavior. So misdemeanor is misbehavior. So they were saying, well, maybe misdemeanor and bad and good behavior, they were kind of synonymous with each other. I don't know about that. But we have to assume that if the framers of the Constitution used different terminology, it meant something. So again, for congressmen, senators, the president, it is high crimes and misdemeanors. But when it came to judges, they said they will hold their office during good behavior. That was different, right? And so what that meant, and what the framers, and when you study the history and the Federalist Papers and all that stuff, what it slowly reveals is they wanted a lower standard, or I'm sorry, a higher standard for judges, right? Like for members of Congress and senators, like, hey, like no high crimes and misdemeanors, right? But for judges, it's like anything that would be considered bad behavior, right? Because you're supposed to be an impartial, nonpartisan, representative branch. So if you do anything that's remotely bad behavior, that should be grounds for removal. But here's the thing. They never established a procedure for removing judges. Everybody just assumed, well, the impeachment is how you remove them, right? You impeach them. But the impeachment requires, again, high crimes and misdemeanors. It's different in the other section. It says bad behavior or good behavior or lack of good behavior. So theoretically, you could have a majority vote of both to remove a judge. And you could say, we've deemed that you've engaged in bad behavior, and a majority of the House and a majority of the Senate have both voted that you engaged in bad behavior. And on that basis, we are revoking your judicial appointment. That would create a constitutional crisis because Congress has now spoken and told a judge there to be removed. Now, the judge could clearly disagree and say, well, I disagree. And it's the province of the judiciary to say what the law is, and I think that your constitutional interpretation is. I can tell you the judiciary doesn't have guards. And so Congress controls the military. So there is a way. Now, and the reason why I'm willing to take a hostile approach to that is because you have Supreme Court Associate Justices like Samuel Alito saying publicly that the people of the United States and the legislative branch in Congress have no power to regulate the Supreme Court. And that pisses me off to the core. He really truly said, and that he is untouchable. And I think that until Congress grows a spine and is willing to create a constitutional crisis and say, no, we are passing a resolution in both chambers to say that you've engaged in bad behavior, Clarence Thomas, and by a majority vote, we are saying that, especially the Senate, we are hereby revoking your judicial appointment for having engaged in behavior other than good behavior in accordance with the Constitution. That is what would be needed to force Clarence Thomas to step down.
But with the way in which how our political system is constructed, and the division within these parties, it's going to be, division within.
Well, that's why I'm saying a simple majority vote, because Democrats control the Senate right now, right? And Democrats are only like a handful of votes away from controlling the House. And what the Supreme Court just did in Alabama, creating two new districts that are almost guaranteed to be Democratic districts, that's going to be two more votes. Then there are other jurisdictions where there was some gerrymandering as well, where there's going to be a couple of more, or I should say undoing of gerrymandering, where Democrats are going to pick up more seats. So all you need is a simple majority in both houses.
Yes.
Versus if you're going to impeach somebody, right? If you're going to impeach somebody, you need a 2/3 majority in both house, or no, sorry, you need a majority in the House of Representatives, and then you need, your 2/3 in the Senate in order to convict. And so that in this political environment is unattainable. But that's that is for impeachment. I'm not calling for impeachment. I'm calling for a legislative determination of behavior other than good behavior in contravention of the Constitution, and the U.S. Senate that granted the lifetime appointment revoking that lifetime appointment. Never been done before, and it really would create a crisis if a justice refused to step down. And I think for the sake of the republic, the justice would ultimately decide to step down, lest he create a crisis, right? The legislative branch is the voice of the people. And ultimately, the fourth branch of government is the people. And they speak through the legislative branch. And that would be the people of the United States telling Clarence Thomas, you engaged in bad behavior in violation of the Constitution, and it's time for you to step down. But we'll see. That would be a better use of Congress's time. But unfortunately, they lacked strategic mindset.
I know it's coming up. There's a question that Mr. Paul Taylor asked me. Well, you may have seen it. It was on Twitter. I invited questions. One person responded by Mr. Paul Taylor -Burr on Twitter. This is your question, Paul. You will see us later. It says, what are the chances if Trump wins and the Republicans overturning the two-term, and he says only from 1951, as I read it, they'd need a 3 out of 4 of states to approve the 22nd, and he put the 22nd Amendment. Any response to that? Yeah. What are the chances if Trump wins? Yeah,
zero. It's like I said before, changing the U.S. Constitution is incredibly difficult, and there's ways that states can, even if Democrats were in the minority in a particular state, there's ways that they can prevent the state legislature from ratifying a constitutional amendment. So they can't undo a constitutional amendment. You have to pass a new constitutional amendment, basically saying, reversing the old one. And it has to say like, oh, there are no term limits for the presidency of the United States. And I can just tell you that the vast majority of the Republican Party itself doesn't support that. That is just Trump and the little MAGA 15 to 20% bloc that support that. 80% plus of American citizens do not support that. So I would say that the chances are less than 0.0001%. For example, like in the Texas legislature where I live, one time when Republicans were trying to push something really aggressive, Democrats decided to stage a walkout so that they wouldn't have the quorum necessary to actually hold a legislative session. So there are ways that the minority can fight back to prevent, one-party domination. So no, I would chalk that up as liberal hysteria. It won't happen. So don't worry about that.
I have another question. Some time ago, you said that you weren't being covered. You weren't being covered when you had filed this lawsuit. And one of the reasons you said is mainstream media is not covering you because the liberals and the mainstream media, the Democrats, they want Donald Trump to win because they think he may fail. And you had sounded the alarm bells from back then saying that is a bad strategy. It seems as if it is becoming a bad strategy. Donald Trump continues to continue to grow. Support for him around the country continues to grow. So any response to what do you think? And you said that the only way he can be derailed is by your case. So what has changed? Have you is there more viewership for you now? And do you think the Democrats policies have changed? And what is the outlook? Because I think Trump is in New Hampshire today. His support for him seems to be growing. And what do you think? What is the outlook tells you?
Yeah. So the outlook is this. The Democrats are conflicted right now. There's about half of Democratic leadership, I should say, that support what I'm doing. And they're just like, yeah, get rid of Trump. And that way it's a fair fight between Biden and either DeSantis or Nikki Haley. It's going to be likely one of them. The other ones are a bunch of jokes. And that would likely be the fight, right? And I'd have to figure out how, I don't think I can stomach Ron DeSantis. He's already exhibited his fascist tendencies. And to be completely honest, I would be inclined at that point to working and brokering a deal with Joe Biden. So what some of us would propose to Joe Biden is let conservatives take over the Department of Commerce and the Department of Treasury. so we can run the nation's fiscal policy and economic policy and get this country back on good economic footing, which historically conservative Republicans tend to be a little bit better at, just being honest. But it would be a coalition government, right? Bringing in some conservatives, letting them take over certain sectors where they could probably run things better. And that would guarantee Joe Biden's reelection. But at least with a coalition government where conservatives have a bigger say in what's happening with the nation's economic and monetary policies. The other option, we'd have to see how things play out. But I can tell you right now, if it's Trump, I'm most likely going to start the Biden Republicans group, and I'm going to attend the Democratic National Convention and publicly endorse Joe Biden for re-election and broker a deal with him. If it's DeSantis, I'd say I'm still 70-30 in favor of siding with Biden and trying to create that coalition government. If they're even open to that. If they say no, then I have to reassess at that point. Because all I care about is making sure our country's economy, that's my main thing, is making sure our country's economy gets back in order, right? Groceries are expensive, gas is expensive, life is becoming harder, and it's because they have ass backward policies. But I want to help them, right? I'm not just trying to crap on Joe Biden. I'm saying, hey, things aren't going well. You need other opinions in the room. All you're getting is liberal opinions, and conservatives, we have business background. We have financial backgrounds. We have a lot to contribute. Let's put our minds together and let's improve the nation's economy. And I'm even, again, willing to publicly endorse them to make sure that we can do that. If it's somebody else, and that's the reason they're open to like Nikki Haley. But to be honest, I really don't see the Republican Party unifying behind Nikki Haley because they don't want to admit it, but they are the party of the Christian faith, and she is not a Christian. And there would be a lot of rural America that would simply not be able to stomach getting behind Nikki Haley because of that. And that's something that nobody wants to say out loud and admit, but it's freaking true. So at the end of the day, as much as they hate it, they're stuck with Ron DeSantis, Mr. Princess Pudding Fingers and his white boots. And like I said, I can't stand him. And so we have to see. But I can tell you that I'm going to be in as many ballots as I can. I'm probably going to be polling at around 5 to 7%. And that's going to be the results in all the states, right? So while the primaries are happening, everybody's going to be laughing at me because they're like, oh, he's getting 5 to 7% in every state. They're going to be laughing. That's perfectly fine. 5 to 7% means nothing in a primary. But in a general election, 5 to 7% becomes very relevant, right? Yes. Wisconsin turned on 2.1%, Michigan 1.9%, Arizona 2.3%, Georgia 1.8%. All of a sudden, the guy that controls 5% of moderate Republicans, what I say and what I do and what my group does matters. So I am going to control who becomes the next president of the United States.
And that's quite interesting. We're coming up on the 1 hour mark. We don't want to be too long. I have a couple more questions for you. Say, for example, I have a question as it relates to the last time we had a discussion, we talked about the domestic supply of energy. And fast forward, we see what's going on in the Middle East today. And Biden just recently announced that he's requesting $105 billion be sent to aid in terms of Israel and Ukraine. What is your take on that? Do you think that we should, and not only that, we just gave Iran about $6 billion? What's your point? Do you think we should have given them the $6 billion in exchange for the hostages? And do you support President Biden and request of this $105 billion to help Ukraine? And what's your response in relation to what as it relates to domestic supply of energy? Because you also said that our involvement in the world stem from our strategic positioning as it relates to this oil. We solve the domestic supply of oil, we wouldn't be involved. So based on that and all that's happening, what's your response? How would you get it? How would you respond?
Yeah, so it hurts, right, to see $105 billion go out when Americans are struggling here. But we cannot forget, like the Roman Empire, they forgot and they eventually collapsed. We cannot forget our role in the world. And yes, it sucks, but sometimes it just comes with the territory. We are the global superpower. We have to be involved. We have to. And right now with Putin and his empirical ambitions, we have to put a stop to it. And this is our one and only chance to have a proxy war with Putin's evil empire. And I am 100% for it. Again, I know that now is not the best timing, but appeasement only makes the aggressor more aggressive. We learned this. This was a rule of international law developed after Hitler, right? We let him take Czechoslovakia, and then we turned a blind eye to other territorial claims. And when you feed that beast, it wants more, and it's going to keep going after more. And we have to put our foot down. And yes, it sucks that it happened right around COVID, and we're having all this economic turmoil here. But don't worry, it is money well spent and put on the national credit card. And I am not I'm a deficit hawk. I want to aggressively go after national debt. But this is one of those things where it's just like, no, we need to do this. It's absolutely critical. It has to do with if not, all of Europe could be thrown into chaos, and then we're on World War III. So if we don't put up a fight in Ukraine, we are going to go to World War III. But then you have the naysayers and the pro-Putin people saying, oh, this is going to spark World War III. No, it's not. We're bleeding Putin dry right now in Ukraine. The second we stop doing that, he's going to get more powerful, more emboldened, and go after more territorial claims. Now, Israel and what's going on.
Yes.
It's a whole other question. I support. Look, what happened was absolutely horrible, right? And indefensible. Hamas, and there was no way that Hamas pulled this off without a lot of the complacency and willful blindness of a lot of the people in Palestine. They had to have known what was going on, and they turned a blind eye to it. So there's plenty of blame to go around. What they did was a terrorist attack on innocent civilians. Israel had every right to go in there and retaliate. And I'm a big retaliatory hawk. Kill one American, we're going to kill 10,000 of your people. And as long as we maintain that 1 to 10,000 ratio, nobody's ever going to F with us. So I like that because it sends a clear message, and Israel has every right to adopt that same type of policy as well. However, that being said, we have no skin in this fight. We can support them limitedly, but I would not be okay with pumping billions and billions of dollars more into the federal deficit for that. We've already given them enough. We've given them weapons. We all know they're freaking nukes there. We've given them nukes. We've given them weapons. We've given everything to defend themselves. That's it, right? It's time for Netanyahu to put up or shut up, right? He's been talking tough for all these years, borderline, despot, and to a certain extent, he stoked it, or if it was going to happen no matter what. But whatever, war broke out. It's on them now. It's their war. They have to win it or lose it. And I don't want to agitate the Middle East any more than it's already agitated with us. So I prefer just kind of washing our hands, stepping back, and saying, "Hey, look, we've already given you all the weapons. We can't give you any more. Not right now. We have no stake. We have no skin in that fight." In other words, Ukraine is different, right? I mean, that's Russia. That's the delicate balance in that Eastern European sector, right, where we've always had wars, like Kosovo breaking out, and then now to the north in Ukraine and everything, and that has to do with NATO. But the Middle East, it's a touchy topic, and we've already we should have already learned our lesson, when we started messing with Afghanistan, and we supported and trained Osama bin Laden and Mujahideen, and then that came back to bite us in the ass, because he felt betrayed when we just upped and left, and then he decided to 9/11 us. But of course, Americans don't know about the history of the CIA and how we trained Osama bin Laden and the Mujahideen to fight the Soviets in Afghanistan, and then how we cut them out and left them out to dry. So, but all that being said, this is one of those things where I don't want to get involved. I do not to give not to beat a dead horse, but Robert Kennedy, for example, he decided to express an opinion on this in 1968, and then it turned out a Palestinian kid. Supposedly, we don't really know 100% for sure if there was more than one gunman, but Saran definitely decided to shoot him in the head, right? And it's one of those things where, do I support the state of Israel? Yes. Do I support the past military and financial support of the state of Israel? Yes. Do I support the right to defend themselves? Yes. Should we get involved in the fight? Hell no. Absolutely not. We've given them enough. Again, they have to fight for their own territory now.
Yes, yes. I mean, there are those who believe that Israel shouldn't be a state. There are those who believe Israel shouldn't be there in the first place, not until 1944. I've argued that in 1944, but then some people say it began before the Israel defense. Oh, it was our land. It's a biblical theological issue as well. I
Yeah,
studied theology, so
I
it's
know.
kind of
It's tough. It's tough. But I mean, one thing I always tell people is this: nations are conquered,
yeah, yeah,
territories change, and you can be like the Native American. And look, I'm 60% Native American according to Ancestry DNA, so I can say this. But you can
yes.
be like the Native
Okay.
Americans and just continue to whine and complain about how you had your land taken from you and we've
Yeah,
been colonized, or you can just adapt, just join the society. You know what I mean? And it's just adapt and overcome. That's all it takes. You know what I mean? But all I can say is a new flag goes over the land. The land hasn't changed, and just move on. You know what I mean? And I do support the two-state solution, but then you have leaders like Netanyahu that really start like stoking the flames, and then you have fanatics like Hamas that then attack and then give justification for a brutal counterattack. And it's look, this has been going on for what, 3,000-4,000 years.
yes. It's not going to
You
stop.
and I aren't going to solve this.
No, it's not.
Renaldo.
That is true. It will never
2,000
stop.
years later, there's still going to be another
Yes.
Renaldo John talking about
Yes,
how to fix
yes.
the Middle East. It ain't going to happen.
I completely agree with you. It's Israel have to step up and they have to fight that war. We've given them enough. I completely agree with you. But by the way, my last question. You said the last time, this is the last question. You talked about a rainbow coalition starting in New Hampshire. What's going on? Have you started the Rainbow Coalition in terms where are you in terms of developmental stages? What's going on with the Rainbow Coalition in New Hampshire? Have you started that yet?
All right. So one thing I've learned is that Trump's legal team and their strategists watch everything I say now. So they're going to watch every second of this video. So I have to be careful now. I did and said certain things to get their attention to make them realize like that I'm coming after them. But the element of surprise is gone. They know the threat that I pose. And so now I'm staying very tight-lipped about some of the critical strategies. But I can tell you that they're already going to know what you're referring to, and they're aware of it already. But I can tell you that everybody is going to be shocked and surprised on Election Day in New Hampshire at how well I perform. And I'll leave it at that. But there's a surprise brewing behind the scenes that they are still unaware of, and they're gonna watch this video and start digging more and trying to figure it out. But they're not. They're not. They're gonna find out the hard way why I was the chess master when I was younger.
Oh wow, this is good. Oh, wow, what an amazing, refreshing conversation. And that's it. That's all the question I have, all the time we have for questioning. This was great. Thank you for joining us. And any last word? What's the outlook for your campaign? What's the outlook for AI Tax, Castro and Company? What's the outlook for you?
Everything is looking great. I'm working around the clock. Like literally just this morning, I filed 3 filings in 3 different courts in New Mexico, West Virginia, and I can't remember the other one. But it's full steam ahead. Everything's going great. So just keep your eye on the news.
Yes, we wish that, and then we are the news. Please continue. Don't forget to give us the breaking news before anybody else.
Yeah, I will.
But thank you, man. And by the way, congrats. I see that you're all over Newsweek. Everybody is interviewing you. That's great.
Like now it's everywhere. Fox News, CNN,
yes.
ABC, CBS, the works.
If you need to get in touch with John Castro, please remember he's on Twitter and he's on LinkedIn and Facebook. Just go to Real Johnny. I always forget your
Real
name.
John A. Castro. Yeah.
Real John A. Castro, because I follow you on all of them, and your name is kind of different on each. So it's Real John A. Castro for Twitter, and then for Facebook it's John Anthony Castro. Sorry, for Facebook, John Anthony Castro, and you're also on YouTube. You're also on LinkedIn at John Anthony Castro. So, and he has a page, johncastro.com. Yes.
Yeah. Yep.
Great. So follow him, message him. And this is the NeoLiberal Round, brought to you by the NeoLiberal Corporation. We're always serving the world today to solve the most challenges by making popular what was the monopoly. I always say we give you news from the subaltern perspective. history from below or perspectives from below. So support us, and we are available on all platforms. Now we are on SoundCloud. But thank you so much. Visit us by going to anchor.fm/theneoliberal/support. And please go to theneoliberal.com and RenaldoCMcKenzie.com. Walk good.